Create a 10 minutes video for YouTube about practical money-saving strategies, like cutting expenses and side hustles, investment approaches, like stock market and passive income, or specific wealth-building systems, like house hacking and business perks. Turned my biggest monthly expense into an income-generating machine and built a fortune from literally nothing. This is the story of how I did it. Just a few years ago, I was drowning. Seriously. I had over $50,000 in student loans and credit card debt. I was stuck in a soul-crushing 9-to-5 that barely paid my bills, and you know that gut punch feeling when your rent is due? That was my reality, every single month. I felt completely trapped, like I was just running on a treadmill to stay in the exact same spot. I was one unexpected car repair away from total financial disaster. So, what changed? It wasn't a lottery win or some risky stock bet. It was a complete shift in how I looked at my life. I discovered a wealth-building system that was hiding in plain sight, a system that let me grab the controls and turn my entire situation around. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact steps I took, so you can do it too. Section 1. The turning point. My rock-bottom moment came on a rainy Tuesday. I was sitting at my kitchen table, just staring at an eviction warning. It wasn't just the rain outside that was bleak. A storm had been brewing inside me for months. The constant low-grade anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck had finally broken, and this piece of paper was the thunderclap. The words felt like a physical blow. I'd been juggling payments for months, robbing Peter to pay Paul, a frantic shell game just to stay afloat. Using a credit card to pay a utility bill, hoping my paycheck would clear before the card payment was due. Delaying one bill to cover another, a desperate, stressful dance. But the music had stopped. There were no more shells to move, no more runway left. I had hit a wall, and it was solid. I looked at that piece of paper, then around my tiny, overpriced apartment, and I just felt this wave of anger. My housing cost was a black hole that swallowed nearly 40% of my income every month. It wasn't just anger, it was a profound sense of injustice. I was working harder than ever, playing by all the rules society sets out for us, yet I was going backward. That rent payment wasn't just an expense, it felt like a penalty for simply existing. A monthly punishment that ensured I could never get ahead. The stress wasn't just about money. It was the crushing weight of feeling trapped in a system that felt rigged against me. And then, something shifted. As I watched the raindrops trace paths down the window pane, a thought, quiet at first, cut through the noise of my panic. It was so simple, yet it felt like a lightning strike in my mind. All this energy, all this stress, all this money, was flowing in the wrong direction. What if I could reverse it? What if the single biggest drain on my finances could become its biggest contributor? What if the roof over my head didn't just shelter me, but could actually build my wealth? This idea felt radical, almost impossible. We're all handed the same playbook, right? Get a job, save for 10 years for a down payment, buy a house, and then spend the next 30 years chained to a mortgage. A home is a nest egg, a place for forced savings that you might be able to tap into when you're old and gray. But an active income source? Something that puts cash in your pocket month after month starting now? That wasn't in the playbook. My mind immediately threw up roadblocks. I'm not a landlord. What about terrible tenants? It's too complicated, too risky. The fear was real, a direct product of a lifetime of financial conditioning. But the seed of the idea was stronger than the fear. That was the true turning point. In that moment, the eviction notice on my table transformed from a symbol of defeat into a catalyst for change. I made a conscious decision. I would no longer view my housing cost as a non-negotiable burden. I would treat it as a problem to be solved, an equation to be cracked. And that single shift in perspective was like flipping a switch in a dark room. Suddenly, I could see a path forward. My anger turned into fuel. My desperation turned into determination. I dove headfirst into research, And that's when I discovered a name for this radical idea: house hacking. It's not some new age gimmick. It's a time-tested strategy, brilliantly simple in its concept. You buy a multi-unit property, like a duplex or a triplex, you live in one of the units, and you rent out the others. The rent you collect from your tenants then goes directly towards paying your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance. In the best-case scenario, their rent covers all of your housing costs, and you're essentially living for free. In an even better scenario, you're actually making a profit each month. You're getting paid to live in your own home. The very thing that was drowning me could become my life raft. Section 2. The Transformation Journey. So, how did I go from an eviction notice to holding the keys to my own property? It wasn't magic, and it didn't happen overnight. The path I took was built on simple, actionable steps. It all came down to a 4-step plan that strips away the complexity. This is the exact framework that shifted my reality, and it's one that anyone, including you, can follow to take back control and start building real wealth. It's not about luck, it's about having a roadmap. Step 1. The groundwork: mastering my money. Before I could even dream about mortgages, I had to perform a kind of financial surgery on myself. This is the foundation upon which everything else is built. If this step is weak, the whole structure will collapse. It meant facing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. The first task was to get brutally honest. For 60 straight days, I tracked every single dollar. I used a budgeting app, but a notebook works just as well. The tool doesn't matter as much as the discipline. Every coffee, every forgotten subscription, every late fee, it all went into the log. At first it was agonizing. I was shocked at how much I was spending on takeout or impulse buys from targeted ads. But after the initial sting wore off, something incredible happened. The pain turned into power. I wasn't looking at a list of my failures. I was looking at a map showing me exactly where the leaks were in my financial boat. I finally saw all the wants disguised as needs, and with that knowledge, I could finally start plugging the holes. That data became the blueprint for my new budget. I adopted a proven system, the 50-30-20 rule. It's simple. 50% of my after-tax income was for absolute needs. This is the stuff you can't live without: rent, utilities, essential groceries, and transportation. No frills, just survival. Then 30% was for wants. This was a game changer, because an overly restrictive budget is bound to fail. This 30% gave me permission to still live life, to see a movie or grab dinner with a friend. It made the plan feel achievable, not like a punishment. The final, most important 20% was aimed squarely at my future: savings and aggressively paying off debt. Creating a budget is one thing, sticking to it is another. I knew my willpower was my weakest link, so I removed it from the equation. I automated everything. I set up automatic transfers in my online banking, so the system went to work the moment my paycheck landed. 20% was immediately whisked into a separate high-yield savings account labeled House Down Payment. I chose a high-yield account to let my money work for me. Another chunk was automatically sent to my highest interest credit card. This avalanche method saves the most money over time. By paying myself first, the money left in my checking account was what I had to live on. No temptation. But even with my new budget, the math was discouraging. Saving alone was too slow. There's a hard limit to how much you can cut, but no limit to how much you can earn. I realized I had to switch from playing defense to offense. I needed to increase my income. So I looked at the skills I already had and started a side hustle using my graphic design skills on nights and weekends. For you, it might be writing, tutoring, or monetizing another talent. And let's be clear, this wasn't fun money. It had a single, dedicated purpose. Every dollar I earned went straight into that down payment fund. As soon as a client paid, I transferred it directly to savings. This phase was an absolute grind. It meant saying no to social events and weekend trips. It meant early mornings and late nights. I was fueled by a vision of my goal that was stronger than any temporary desire. I was trading short-term comfort for long-term freedom. With every dollar I saved, I felt a profound shift. I was no longer a victim of my circumstances, just surviving. I was an active participant in my own rescue. I was building. This groundwork phase wasn't just about money. It was about forging the discipline and mindset of an investor. Step 2. The real money hack: executing the house hack. After a year and a half of intense saving, I hit my target. It wasn't a massive number because I wasn't aiming for the mythical 20% down payment. My goal was the down payment for an FHA loan. This government-backed loan is a game changer, letting you buy an owner-occupied property, including multifamily homes, with as little as 3.5% down. On a $300,000 duplex, that's a $10,500 down payment, not the $60,000 that stops so many people. This is crucial. The 20% down rule is mostly for pure investment properties. For the home you plan to live in, the barrier is dramatically lower. There are other great options too, like VA or USDA loans, which can be 0% down. The point is, you have options. Of course, getting approved isn't just about the cash. Lenders look at your whole financial picture, especially your credit score and your debt-to-income ratio, or DTI. For an FHA loan, you can often get approved with a credit score in the 600s, though higher is always better for your interest rate. Your DTI is just your monthly debt payments divided by your gross monthly income. Lenders want to see that you're not overextended. My key strategy was to aggressively pay down high-interest debt like credit cards before applying. This made my loan application much stronger and is a tip I give to everyone. With my pre-approval letter in hand, the hunt began. But I had to fundamentally shift my mindset. I wasn't buying my dream home. I was acquiring a financial asset, a tool. This meant my criteria were completely different. I was looking for numbers that worked. I bought a small, unassuming 2-unit duplex. It was clean and safe, but not glamorous, and it was located in what I identified as a path of progress neighborhood. I didn't find it by accident. I spent weeks doing market research, using tools like Zillow and Rentometer to understand average rents. I drove through neighborhoods at different times of day to get a real feel for them, looking for signs of investment like a new coffee shop or renovated homes. This on-the-ground intelligence gave me the confidence to make an offer. Once I closed and moved into my unit, the next critical step was finding a great tenant. This is where the magic, and the anxiety for many, happens. A bad tenant can wipe out any financial gains, so I treated the screening process like a job interview. I created a system. First, I made sure my rental ad and criteria complied with all fair housing laws. That's non-negotiable. My criteria were simple and business-based. Proof of income at least 3 times the monthly rent, a decent credit score, and no prior evictions. I used an online service to run background checks, and I called their previous landlords. It was work, but it was crucial. After a couple of weeks, I found a wonderful family. The day they handed me that first rent check was an empowering moment. Let's break it down. My total mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, was about $1,950 a month. The rent from my tenants was $1,600. Suddenly, my personal cost to live in my own home was just $250 a month. My housing expense, the single biggest line item in my budget, was almost completely eliminated. The psychological weight that lifted was immense. It wasn't just about the money, it was about control. I had taken control of my biggest expense and turned it into an income-producing asset. I was officially house hacking. Now I know that entire process can feel overwhelming. It's easy to get stuck in analysis paralysis, wondering, how do I know if a property is a good deal? That's exactly why I want to help you cut through the noise. I've put together the simple, one-page deal analyzer that I personally used for my very first duplex. It's a straightforward checklist that walks you through the essential numbers: purchase price, financing, rental income, and all the hidden expenses people forget, like vacancy and repairs. It forces you to look at a property with the logic of an investor, removing the emotion that can lead to bad decisions. It's the exact system that gave me the confidence to pull the trigger, and it's completely free. The link is right down in the description. Download it and take the first real step toward turning your housing expense into a wealth-building machine. Step 3. Scaling the system. Building momentum. Living for free was just the beginning. The real goal is to build wealth. Now that my housing cost was covered, all the money I had previously been spending on rent was freed up. I had a significant surplus for the first time in my life. I didn't make the mistake of upgrading my lifestyle. Instead, I put that newly freed up cash to work. I continued living on my modest budget and funneled the extra money into two places: an emergency fund and a low-cost index fund. You build your ark before the rain comes. The house hack itself was also providing priceless experience. I was learning how to be a landlord on site, which is the easiest way to learn. I learned how to handle minor repairs, manage leases, and communicate with tenants. You can't get that from a book, and it prepared me for the next step. Plus, as my tenant paid rent each month, they were paying down my mortgage, which meant I was building equity in the property faster than I ever could on my own. Step 4. Leveraging and diversifying. The path to fortune. 2 years after buying that first duplex, I had built up a decent amount of equity through both the loan paydown and natural market appreciation. I also had a proven track record of rental income, which makes you look much stronger to lenders. I went back to the bank and took out a home equity line of credit, HELOC, on my duplex. This is a loan that lets you borrow against the equity you've built. I used that money as the down payment for my second property, another small multifamily building. I moved into one unit of the new property and rented out my old unit in the first duplex. Just like that, I owned 2 properties. I was living in one unit for free and collecting rent from 3 other units. The cash flow was significant. My net worth was climbing, and for the first time, I had multiple streams of income. I kept investing the positive cash flow into a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, making sure my wealth wasn't just tied up in real estate. Fast forward to today, 5 years after I got that eviction notice. I am completely debt-free. That $50,000 mountain of debt is gone. I own a portfolio of rental units that generate passive income every single month, and I was able to quit that soul-crushing job to focus on my investments and help others. My net worth has gone from negative to well into the 6 figures, and it keeps growing. On top of that, this strategy came with major tax benefits, since I could deduct expenses like mortgage interest, property taxes, and even depreciation on the rental portions of my properties. But the most important change isn't the number in my bank account. It's the freedom. It's the absence of that crippling financial anxiety. It's the power to choose how I spend my time. That is the true meaning of wealth. Conclusion. This journey wasn't about luck. It was about following a system. Let's recap the 4 steps. The groundwork. Get brutally honest about your finances. Create a budget you can automate and increase your income. The house hack. Buy a modest multifamily property with a low down payment loan and have your tenants pay your mortgage. Build momentum. Live frugally and use your new cash flow to build an emergency fund and invest. Leverage and scale. Use the equity from your first property to buy the next one, expanding your portfolio and income streams. I know what you might be thinking. The market is different now, or I can't afford a property in my area. But the principles are the same. Home ownership in 2025 takes creativity, but it is absolutely possible. This journey is simple, but it is not easy. It requires discipline and a willingness to learn. But if a guy who was once weeks away from being homeless can do it, believe me, you can too. Building wealth is a marathon, not a sprint. If you got any value from this video, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share every detail of my wealth building journey here each week. And more importantly, leave a comment below and tell me the one thing you are going to do this week to start taking control of your FINA.